Okay, we are live.
Awesome. Good evening, wherever you're catching from us in Europe. It is a great evening here. For those in the Americas, good morning, and everyone else, how are you? I'm your host this evening. My name is Joanne Matenge. I welcome you to our Tuesday meetup. I will be your host today. A little bit about myself is I have a diverse background with experiences in multiple sectors, both technology and non-technology. One of those people you'll say pivoted into product management from an entrepreneurial stint in the beauty industry. And currently with Product People, I'm handling a B2B and B2C client roles as Associate Product Manager. What we do at Product People is we take on interim product management roles for about 3 to 6 months. Our specialty is to onboard first, align teams, and deliver great outcomes as quick as possible. We are proud to say that some people call us freelance product managers, but what we are great at is doing the unglamorous work of product managers. Alongside this, which is why you're here this evening, is that we have a community of 6K members that continue to join us on different days of the week to share knowledge and hear from different speakers. One of the things, I'm having a screen freeze. One of the use cases of our type of services is we join a team within a startup organization to fill in a specific gap. One of the things we do is perhaps one of your team members is on parental leave. You have a hiring gap of about 2 to 9 months, or you have a temporary initiative that needs an urgent work to be done. And also we provide coaching to product teams and leaders on process and everything product. We are a team of diverse individuals distributed across different countries. Working remotely makes us pride ourselves with our specialty skills and experiences from different markets, different products. Our team has grown really fast in the past year, and we are more than happy to have familiar faces every day on the screen. One of our key highlights is from the screen, you can see some of our clients, Tia, Dr. Smile, Philatix, Zalando. Most of these clients are repeat clients, so it is a testament of our good services and delivering outcomes. For those of you who'd like to join our team, we are currently hiring PM roles and talent acquisition managers. Please feel free to ask to join, to send your application via productpeople.join.com. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest speaker today, Andrea Stubbe, Head of Product Commercetools. She has a diverse background as well as lead product owner, co-founder, and amongst other roles. And today she speaks to us about presenting a great roadmap to different audiences. Andrea, back to you.
Hi, everyone. So,
share the screen.
Share. Good. You all see my screen? Yay. So, just going to skip this. Yeah, this is me. So, I have been working as a product manager for a little bit more than 10 years now. And being a product manager, at least the jobs I had, comes with a lot of roadmap presentations. So in the past 10 years, I've been presenting roadmaps to customers and partners, to our internal representatives that then talk to customers and partners, which is customer success and professional services, to sales prospects, like the ones that aren't yet customers but want to see the roadmap before they sign. So our sales and pre-sales teams, obviously the product teams who will then build things on the roadmap, and also to the entire company. So overall, I run something between like 50 to 100 internal and external representations each year, which seems excessive, but somehow they all seem to be needed, those presentations. So here are a few things that I learned on the way for what works and what doesn't work so well. Enjoy. This is, and maybe that's because I've been doing that for more than 10 years, this is my very first roadmap, which was structured by months. And then you have those beautiful square things in PowerPoint, and there can never be a gap because that means what are the people doing in this gap? So you just have to make sure that you somehow fill it up, and you have to invent things. And I occasionally just made a box bigger so that the text fits in. And I don't think anyone ever enjoyed seeing those roadmaps. And I definitely did not enjoy making those roadmaps because honestly, it was just made up. It didn't tell a story. And PowerPoint's really fidgety with boxes. So what I transitioned to as soon as I had the freedom to choose my roadmap style was to be very focused on the audiences and know what I want to bring across with the presentation. So I'm just going to walk you through a couple of those people that I present a roadmap to and a style that I think works for them. First one, you are presenting a roadmap to a product team that wants to have an impact, like they're new in the company, maybe they're super excited, they really want to change things. And what I do here is I try to excite the team about what an amazing impact that they will have, how they will contribute to the success of our customers, the success of our company, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of showing off here. The important thing is get people excited, tell stories, bring some anecdotes for customers that ask for something and how it will help them. Have a very clear and one goal. Feel free to be creative in how you phrase it. And for the style, what works for me is that you structure it in first, then, and later. So you don't have like strict things what you do, but you have like something like this is what we will do first because it has the highest value. And then once you're done with that, there's more cool things to do. This is what we will do then. And just so you know what's happening then, this is what you can do later. The one challenge that I saw with this is that, so right now we have like 18 teams in Commercetools, and not always is it true that every team can contribute to like the big goal. Maybe because you're working on just like a little side area of the product, or maybe because you have to focus on scalability and other people can focus on customer value. So try to find the best context that works and try to find the one big goal that each team can contribute to, just so that they don't feel like they're not important. Like the worst you can do is you have an excited team and you tell them, yeah, you know what you work on is not really that important. Another team roadmap presentation for pretty much the opposite team. So sometimes I know you've all been there, you work with a team and everything's just on fire. You're barely surviving. You're just swamped with support tickets, platforms down all the time. Things are horrible. And what you have to avoid is when you can forget about exciting them. They're like, yeah, go away. It's important to be very mindful of the state that this team is right now and avoid putting more stress on them. So just if you look at the different columns that I have here, it's clearly structured, and this time not by now, next, later, but by what is the expected outcome specifically in this quarter. And be very vague so you can see like, look, for this, we will only plan and prepare. We don't expect anything to be delivered or even visible. We're taking it slow here. And then this is something that we will continue to work on. And then only those few things we will finish up. Another thing that works really well is if you also add all of the invisible but stress creating work to the roadmap. So if you have something like, where do I have it? This, for example, let's imagine the team is struggling because they have to onboard a lot of new colleagues within a short time frame. Then you can say, we make it specific. It's not actual development work, but it is work. So say all of the organizational topics, all of the topics that will help long-term, and all of the topics also that are co-owned by somebody in management, put them on the roadmap, make it visible, show that you care, show that you really understand the situation that you're in. And don't only show it, like really do it, obviously. And then like add something like a little disclaimer, which shows it even more. It's like, hey, we noticed that you're under fire. We noticed that you can only spend like 60% of your time on the roadmap work. This is why we only plan for 60% of the time. Next up, again, a completely different audience, people that sell to customers. My experience is they only want to hear what they want to hear. If you bring them anything that's like, we might possibly deliver that, they say, oh, cool, I'm going to promise that to my customers. So this is like the very, very defensive version of a roadmap. And again, be really clear of which stage you want to achieve. Like for this one, we only do user research. For this one, we will start developing it, but it will not be visible yet. And those are the few things that we actually plan on delivering. And put a really big disclaimer about your delivery risks. Don't just have this is a roadmap and not a promise, blah, 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 standard disclaimer. Be very specific about what the delivery risks are. And then they can make up their mind if they still really feel like promising anything that they have and that they see on the roadmap, because they are aware of the risks. And oh yeah, another thing very unrelated to the making promises part is those are people that sell to customers. So they in their day-to-day job, they talk to customers and they hear all of their impact and they hear all of their feedback and their wishes and requests. So what I often do is to prefix the general roadmap presentation with an explanation on how we took customer input into account. Like we show a couple of example customers, say, hey, all of those did ask for it. It is really important for all of them. We're going to solve a problem for those, to raise awareness that we actually care about them. Then the next one. This is the first slide. This is that is about external presentations. And this is something that I do for important customers because it's a lot of work. So every customer that I show a roadmap to, they get their own personalized version of it because it works, really. So what I do is I spend a lot of time researching the specific customer. I look into what requests did they have. I look into what is their mindset. Do they get totally excited about innovation topics, no matter whether they are interesting for them or not? Did they choose us as a vendor because we are the most innovative in the market? Tell them about the innovation. If they are totally excited about compliance, tell them everything we do with regard to security. Really focus on what they will want you to work on, basically. And just skip everything else. If you know that they're not using a specific part of your product, you don't have to talk about it. If you know they just really don't care about security, no need to mention it. Or quickly summarize it maybe in a like what else section or something. Keep it high level. I try avoiding those tabular layouts. I try to avoiding everything that looks like a timeline or something. And focus on the problems that it will solve for specifically them. And next up. Yeah, this one works internally and externally. So sometimes you have a stakeholder that really thinks that their feature is the bestest idea on the planet. And sometimes it is, but we still aren't able to put it on the roadmap because there's all sorts of constraints, like not having a team for it. So what works real well here is that you explain how you prioritize to show why something didn't make it on the roadmap. So you're like, this is the prioritization methodology that we use. This is how it looks like for the one thing that you wanted. This is how it looks like for the top 15, because that's our threshold, can't take on more. And then once they understand and show that they understand the process and the methodology that you use for building your roadmap, and see that it's not just you randomly deciding against them because you hate them, it's way easier to have a conversation then. For the format, it's pretty much, you can choose whatever you want. So first then later works well. You can also use the we will get up till this certain stage. That's also just fine. Oh yeah, and take time to listen. So they will often keep pushing for that feature and keep arguing about your methodology or your choices. So just really take the time to have that conversation. Then I think this is second to last one. Your management team, occasionally you're going to have to present to the CEO or something. Thing is, they are not really that interested in all of the details very often. Sometimes they are, and then again, treat them like they are an important customer and figure out what excites them. Point out the one key thing that you want to achieve in whatever your scheduling period is. And then add the also working on those topics. Keep it very high level. You don't have to talk about problems that you're solving. They care more about like what will you focus on and how will it solve, how will it help the company in the end. Again, be very clear about the delivery risks, especially the ones where that team that you're presenting to can do something against them. So if you need more money, this is a good time to make people aware of it. Then this is the trickiest one. If you present to the entire company or generally like the world or something, because the information need that those big groups have and also the emotions that they have, they are all over the place. So you can't really do what I really like doing, target it to your audience, because there is no clear specific audience. So I just basically take all the things from the other roadmaps and try to put them into one. So those were the things, right? So you want to inform, you want to excite people. You also want to be mindful. You want to definitely build trust that this is a good and solid roadmap that makes sense. And you want to tell the truth and not be too optimistic or something. So this is how it could look like. Start with exciting people. Like this is the one big thing that we want to do and it's just purely amazing. Tell a bunch of stories. Switch over to informative version. Show all the key things that you plan to work on. People will read those and they will spot the things that they really want to see on the roadmap. Next one, build trust by explaining clearly how you got to that roadmap and that is not just like completely random. Then tell the truth. Yeah, you can use actually, this is the wrong slide. It should say first and later. I think for telling the truth, it's better to have this. How far do you plan on getting in this specific iteration? So you could use something like research phase, development phase, going live with it or something. And then lastly, be mindful, be clear about the deliveries that you have, which works both ways really. It works for the developers because they see that their problems are being made publicly available. And it also works for the ones that have to sell it and need to be mindful. And it works for the ones that might actually help you solving the problems. And that's it. I had 20 minutes and I used 20 minutes.
That's a great presentation, Andrea. I really like, first of all, how when you're presenting to the important people important customers, you personalize the roadmap based on how important it is to their needs. It's quite a unique approach right there. We're gonna look at questions and see what we have coming through. So far, we don't have questions on.
Joanna, should we raise our hands or type them in chat or?
We are taking questions from the platform, and you could share. Yeah, right now we don't have questions, but I do have a question regarding when you're saying being mindful that the roadmap, what you're promising, has some risks to different, say, stakeholders in this case. How have you navigated pushback? For example, in the case where you present something not really agreeable, it's quite a surprise for some people. What's one way to handle such kind of a situation on the spot sometimes, or it could come later, but I prefer you say how you handled it, or is there a way to do it?
Yeah, so I think I have given very few roadmap presentations where they haven't been pushed back. It's very normal. Do you mean specifically from the team that will basically execute the roadmap, or do you mean from the people that are waiting for things on the roadmap?
The audience of your roadmap could say, I don't agree with what you're promising here or what you're suggesting here. Mm-hmm. How do you overcome that?
Okay, basically 2 points. So if the pushback is, I think your prioritization doesn't make any sense and it's stupid, then I refer back to the methodology that we have. And it's very well thought through, I think. When it comes to pushback from the team, that really shouldn't happen, because before we ever show a roadmap to anyone, it is aligned from the team. It's basically coming from the team and then just like put into a nicer format. So that really shouldn't happen. And if it does, then say like, oops, sorry, I guess I misunderstood you there, and then adjust it. Never put something on the roadmap where the team is like, no way.
That's a good takeaway for PMs in our audience. I'm seeing quite a number of questions on YouTube, on the Zoom here. Let's start with one. How do you keep track of all the versions once you have made changes? So to do with version control of your roadmap.
Yeah, I do. So one thing is that the slide making tool that we use has version control basically, or it has a history, so you can actually see what happened when. I always have a note on the date when this roadmap has been made. And whenever there is a change in the roadmap, right now, I just very clearly communicate that to all of my stakeholders, but I want to switch that to actually keeping track and having like a change log, because I think that's helpful.
Yeah, I think it's also one of the tactics that PM should also use to keep track of any documentation changes. So to keep track of those things. Getting questions. How are you, right? This is Ralph Muller. How are you going to deal with stakeholders who demand to know the classic? When do we get the feature? Question.
Tell them that I absolutely understand their information need, because so we have like this product and its APIs and stuff. So whenever we build something, people will then have to use that and deliver and develop things using that API. And they have their project plan and they have their teams and they need to figure out staffing. So they really need to know when a specific thing will be there. And I absolutely understand it. And there's nothing in the world that I would like more than to be a magician and know those things. If I would only know, I would absolutely tell them. But there's just no way of telling. So whenever I actually really can predict a time by when something will be finished, I don't mind sharing it. It's just like most of the time I just honestly can't. So it's basically like, yeah, I can give you that, but it would be lying, and you don't know that. You don't know that.
So that's quite a lot of management of expectations for different people. Another question: how did you land on a maximum 15 product changes in your backlog? Is this a personal or a company rule?
Oh, this is an imaginary number, actually. This like we don't have 15. It's like, but we do check with the teams, like, hey, is this like enough now? Do you think you really want to take on more? Do you think you can do more? It's not a fixed number.
Okay, great. Question from Jabane Mohammed Ayub. Do you run tests internally with your team before revealing it to the client?
It depends. So I usually do present the roadmap internally first, but sometimes there's a real curious client and he wants to see it tomorrow before I have time to present it to the company, and then you just do that. And then you tell them you're the very first to see that. Isn't that cool?
You kind of make it special that they're the first one to see it, and it becomes quite, I hate quite a number of questions. Max Schaffer, how do you handle technical roadmap development for non-technical stakeholders or clients?
It depends. So if it really doesn't matter for them because they just aren't interested in it, then I don't show it. If it is somebody who is interested in it, then I try my very, very best to explain technical topics in understandable words. And my experience is like more often than not, people really are interested in those technical things. They're always like, I didn't understand a word, but it was super interesting.
Awesome. I'll take a question from YouTube. I've seen a question. Moment. How do you recommend making a roadmap visually? Do you recommend any special tool?
No. So I don't mind much about it. I'm just use whatever tool you're good with. Draw it.
So there is no biasness here. Or...
No.
That's great. I mean, because sometimes you could be very biased about a specific tool, and you kind of become make your team think this is the only tool they could use to make a roadmap. So you leave it very open.
And it's an implementation detail. I don't care.
Awesome. And question 2, okay, Pavel Moreno, he has more questions. You commented several times about showing the project risks. Do you consider it's important to show also how to mitigate the risk and the risk weight?
Good
Quite
question.
a loaded question.
Yes. Risk weight, that makes sense. Yes. And I do that. Yes. How to mitigate the risk? That's usually a step done before. So we identify the risks, and then if we find ways to mitigate them, then we do it and don't actually flag it as a risk anymore. If mitigating the risk takes more time, you know what to do then? I put it on the roadmap. Like hire and onboard 5 more people.
So a risk could become a roadmap item.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes.
That's awesome. More questions. Do you always use time periods like now, later, then, or do you ever use months or quarters?
So what we do is on popular demand by our customer base, we do have quarterly roadmaps, and then within this quarter we have this. This is the first thing we do. This is the next thing you do. This is, but more often, what we use is the format that is the stages for how far we'll get.
Okay, so it's not an yearly. Okay, he says he adds, which is the most method to determine the right audience and how do you target them?
Experience, trial and error, really. Sorry.
Oh, awesome. Trial and error. So have you ever failed at making a good judgment call on what to present to a specific person? If I could follow up that.
I think I have been boring a lot of people to hell with my roadmap presentations, yes. Because they were just totally untargeted and just going through the boxes. So
we are a Commercetools implementation partner, and we often get forced to make timelines for delivery. Do you have any advice for getting customers out of this mindset? That's Dirk Kippel.
Tough one. So I'm not sure if there's like a magic recipe that works, but what I usually try is just like honesty and openness and explain it. Like yeah. And it quite often works. Like if you just speak to a person like they're a person and you're like, look, we have the following problems, and then build up empathy both ways and say, yeah, I understand why you need it, but you have to understand why you can't do it. Yeah.
Great. I don't see more questions on Zoom. I think, Andrea, you've really done a great job answering. Your questions are quite concise, straight to the point, just like we like them. Mansoor, am I missing any more questions from any other platform? Don't think so. Let's see. How do you manage? I think we've seen more. Okay, Juan, thank you very much for the questions. When do you think it makes sense to show a prototype?
Depends what you want. Like if you want to get feedback, show it as early as you have something that's possible to give feedback on. If you want to show a prototype as part of basically a status report, look how far we are. It's tricky. If you show it too early, people will really switch into that mindset of, but I've seen it, it's almost done, isn't it? And then you still have to put all the work in and actually making it scalable and stable and add your monitoring. So for that, I would more go for do it as late as possible because you're just raising more expectations.
Okay, and in that case, I think I concur with you in as late as possible part, because sometimes you've also not discovered enough risks that could change what you showed 3 or 4 months ahead. So yeah, I think it's a good technique to use. Jabane, thank you for your questions. How can you get feedback and filter them by priority? Do you use internet one or external users?
I'm not sure I follow.
I think maybe let's use the first part of the question. How you can get feedback and filter them by priority. How you get feedback and prioritize feedback, I think.
Okay. We use a tool. Okay, internal. Now it makes sense. So what we have is like we have 2 things. So one thing is that we have as a PM group, we do go out to customers and talk with them, or like video call with them. And obviously also our UX research team does that a lot. And then we have basically direct feedback that we then use. The other thing we have is we have a brilliant team of customer success, pre-sales, and professional services people that listen real closely to what our customers are saying and then feed that input back to us. And we have a central database where we collect everything. So basically we prioritize by how important is that piece of feedback for a specific customer. And they usually tell us how many people totally ask for it. And yeah, that's about it. So it's like Rice-esque for the feedback.
Okay. And perhaps, are you always using the Rice method for prioritization, or are there other strategies you might find useful?
So we personally don't use Rice. I just use it as an example in the presentation right now. We have a mix of things. So generally, it's more like a, can't remember the word now. So you define different criteria that you want to rank on, and then you assign a weight factor to all of those criteria that you want to rank on. And then for every specific feature, you say how much does it contribute to each of those factors that you rank by. This is what you do to determine the value of a candidate. And what we do instead of using like the E of Rice, we check for feasibility. So we basically check for every possible delivery risk that you can think of. Like, is the team motivated to do it? Does the team have the means to do it? Are the requirements clear? Is the value clear? We have this checklist that we follow. And then if the answer is like a yes, then it goes on the roadmap. If the answer is a no, then we identify the risk and put the risk on the roadmap. Because effort doesn't really work for us all that well, because we have a whole lot of real big things that we need to work on. And the cost of not working on them would be just way too high. So no matter what the effort is, we're going to work on it.
Do you recommend adding, I'm going to take one last question. Do you recommend adding further details, priority, effort, strategic importance, acceptance criteria for each roadmap item?
Yes, and we do that. We do not have it on the roadmap presentations that we give, because that would just be information overkill. So we have, in addition to this, which is like the pretty format of the roadmaps, we also have the tool where we track all of the things that we work on, what the current status is, it's visible for the entire company. And there, for every single feature or work item of sorts, we do have different things tracked, like what is the problem that we want to solve and how does it contribute to the different strategic drivers that we defined, etc. So, yeah.
Your questions are receiving quite great responses, and interesting and insightful. We appreciate your contribution and answering in quick and fast. Actually, I think you've answered about 15 questions or 10 in this case. So it is time to start our networking session. We will be holding it here on Zoom. And for those of us on YouTube, feel free to join our networking session on Zoom. We will stop streaming the live and join us in our networking session. I hope this has been insightful for those of us who will be building roadmaps for our customers. And this event is going to be posted on our YouTube channel for further references, and hope those questions will help you build better roadmaps for the right audience with the right prioritization, and you get good okay without pushback from your stakeholders. Join us for the networking session. It's going to be fun, and we will not record the networking session, so feel free to have your video on or off. For those of you who are not joining us, it's a pleasure to have you today, and hope to see you in our next event next week on Tuesday or Thursday morning.